Hey, Health Kids, here is your virtual lesson 1. We are talking about male and female reproductive anatomy. Now, I know that you all have filled in the diagrams, or those of you that were here have filled in the diagrams of the anatomy. With that, we're supposed to go over it and talk about everything that happens. So that's what you're going to get in this lesson. I am going to show you in a second. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Now that we're sharing the screen, you can see what's on my screen, and I'm going to go over into here, and there's the lesson. I'm going to go full screen with the slides in a second, but here's your questions. So what you're going to have to do is watch this video and then answer these questions, because these are the important things that you need to know when it comes to male and female reproductive anatomy. So with that being said, let's get into the lesson. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I don't want to drag on. Now, I'm going to go presentation mode. I'm going to put myself up in the corner here. Still see my smiling face. I know you all miss me so much. All right, so first thing, male. We're going to talk about the male reproductive anatomy. What I want you to be able to answer is, I'm going to exit this just a second. I'm going to go to the questions. Question 1 says, the sperm in a male travel and follow a path until ejaculation occurs. I've provided the vocab below. Use the diagram and my explanation to fill in the correct path the sperm travel in the male reproductive system. So all these words down here, these vocab words, are somewhere that the sperm either is created in or makes a stop on the way out. We all know what's happening to cause sperm to come out, right? So what you have to do is tell me where it starts, starting point 1, tell me where it goes all along the path, and then where it ends. So let's go back to the lesson. Full screen that. All right, so where does sperm begin? First off, sperm and semen, two different things, kind of. Sperm is the male reproductive cell. That is the little swimmy thing, right? Semen is something that has sperm inside of it. That's a fluid. Sperm themselves are not a fluid. It's important to know. Sperm is not a fluid. It is a cell, and they have little swimmies on them. They move. They're swimmers. So they live in semen. But sperm are originally by themselves. Where are they produced? Inside the testicle. Specifically, inside the testicle, there are these things called seminiferous tubules. Inside of those is where sperm are born. Men, once we hit puberty, have a massive rush of testosterone, and that basically wakes up their testicles, and they say, let's start making sperm. Now, the sperm are made in the testicles, but they're very finicky. And that's why men have a scrotum, and testicles actually hang outside of the male's body. Why is this? And guys, you probably know this. If you've ever gotten cold, or you come out of the pool and everything sort of shrinks up, right? Well, that's because the scrotum is a temperature regulator. Sperm are created at a temperature that is not body temperature, slightly less. So if you're warm or you're hot, the testicles will actually droop lower, right? But if you're cold, they'll shrink up and the testicles will get closer to your body. That's so that they are at the proper temperature to make sperm. They're always making sperm. So once the sperm are created in the testicle, they travel into what's called the epididymis. Spot 2. Epididymis is where the sperm sort of chill and hang out until they get ready. Well, how do the sperm know they get ready? Well, they get an erection and they get ready to leave the body. So once that occurs, they go from the epididymis into a long tube, if you will, called the vas deferens. And that is where the sperm travels, point 3, where the sperm travels up and over, and you can follow my mouse cursor as I'm going up and over to the seminal vesicle. Now, I know I can annotate this by drawing a line, but can I do a color? I want to do a color. Can I do that here? Yes, I can. Let's see. Let's make it red. So sperm, going to go up here, the vas deferens, and travel into the seminal vesicle. Now, in the seminal vesicle, the sperm pick up a sugary substance. Mr. Eckert, why do sperm need sugar? It's for taste? No, it's not for taste. It is for nutrients. Sperm, they live, they're swimmers. The stronger they are, the better they are, they can get to the egg to fertilize it. Well, they don't get that on their own. They need some nutrition. Well, the seminal vesicle provides them nutrition. It secretes sugar. It's something that gets the sperm stronger, gets them ready to go on their journey, if you will. Now, from the seminal vesicle, they travel into what's called the ejaculatory duct. And yes, this is a duct that has a valve on it. And it's an actual valve that usually is open to the bladder. And pee comes out, goes out the guy, right? Well, men are a little bit different than women because we have this valve. And when a man becomes excited or aroused, that valve closes off the bladder. They can't pee, right? And it gets ready, and the sperm then start traveling down into the urethra. But before they do that, they go from the seminal vesicle into the ejaculatory duct, and they chill there, and there is where the prostate gland produces a fluid to sort of protect the sperm and create a protective barrier around them. It helps them live longer. It's important they need to live longer because they don't survive in a woman for a little bit of time. It's actually, they can survive up to 2 to 3 days inside of a woman because they need to travel up into a woman to get to a fallopian tube to find an egg to fertilize it. So they pick up the fluid in the prostate, and then they travel down the urethra, and they make a stop off at what's called the bulbourethral gland. And that is where they pick up a lubricant. It's important that sperm are slippery and slidey so that way they can get through to where they need to get through to fertilize an egg. Once they hit the bulbourethral gland, they come out through the urethra and out of the penis, and that's called ejaculation. So all those steps that I just went through, and if you look on the bottom here, semen equals sperm, seminal vesicle, bulbourethral, prostate. That is what semen equals. It's all those components. It's not just sperm. Sperm is not semen. Sperm is inside semen. So I get on my full screen here for a second. Where did I go? Close that. And then I'm going to exit my full screen. I'm going to go back over to the question. I got to delete that. How do I delete that annotation? This is your starting point. I'm going to get rid of my annotation. Clear it. Clear all my drawings. Bam, there. Sorry about that, guys. So this is your first question. Starting point, obviously the testicles, right? Ending point, urethra. I just gave you 2 of them. All these other ones, bulbourethral, ejaculatory duct, epididymis, seminal vesicle, vas deferens, prostate gland. Tell me the correct order in this question, right? Number 2 says, what part of the male anatomy is cut in a vasectomy? Let's go back to our presentation here. The next slide that we get to is a picture. There's 2 types, right? You got an uncircumcised penis, you got a circumcised penis. They used to do this, back in the day, it was a religious thing. It's no longer really, there's no right or wrong way, right? If a man is uncircumcised, that's fine. If someone is circumcised, it's either a religious belief or it's just for hygiene. If a man is uncircumcised, which plenty of men are, they need to peel back the foreskin and make sure that they're cleaning properly when they wash themselves. so that way the nasty gunk doesn't build up in there. So typically it's common that men are typically circumcised at birth. It's a decision their parents make. Yes, a man when he gets older can get circumcised, but it ain't pleasant. It's not like when they're born. I had my son circumcised, and it's quick, it's easy. He has like pain for like an hour or two, and then it's really, you don't see much of it, much pain or bleeding from it. It's very easy when kids are younger, which is why when kids get like their tonsils out, their recovery is much quicker than an adult who gets their tonsils out. Kids just heal faster because they're rapidly growing. Adults, we're not rapidly growing. We're just maintaining. So next slide. This is talking about a vasectomy. So when a man no longer wants to have children, he can choose to have a procedure called a vasectomy. And your question is, what gets cut? There's two of them. So when I showed you the side-to-side diagram, there was just one testicle in that picture. There's two testicles. There are two vas deferens. Well, a doctor makes small incisions on the left side and the right side of the penis. He goes in and he pulls out the vas deferens. They snip it, they tie off the tubes. They cauterize it with heat, right? They put the tubes back inside, they sew the guy back up, and he can no longer have kids because sperm that are made in the testicles can't travel up and into the urethra. However, they can still make semen. Just doesn't have sperm inside of it. So everything's normal for a man. He still can ejaculate. There's just no sperm inside. It means he can't fertilize an egg. However, if you ever get a vasectomy, which that time hasn't come for me yet. I don't know if I'm done having kids or not, but if you ever do decide to get one, there's still a period of time that a man can still impregnate a woman. That's because after that procedure's done, there still could be sperm living past the vas deferens where it got cut. So people have gotten vasectomies and then have impregnated women. That's why you got to listen to your doctor if that ever happens when you get older, but none of you have to worry about that now. No doctor will perform that on a young man. You're not in a position in your life to make that decision. So now, when we move on to the female side of things, there are several different questions that I have for that, but the next question that you're going to have, I'll go back to my questions, is number 3. What's the pH of the following secretions? Vaginal secretions and semen each have their own pH. And this is when you're talking about pH. Yeah, I'm talking about acidity. I'm talking about bases, right? We're not getting into chemistry class, but a little chemistry of the human body is semen is at like a neutral pH. It's slightly basic. It's at like a 7.2 to 8.0 pH, part of the answer. However, female bodies, their secretions are naturally acidic. This is, and acidic 3.8 to 4.5 is their pH. Second part of the question. Why is a woman's secretions acidic? Because it functions to kill off the weaker sperm. Because you don't want a weak buddy limping up to the egg to fertilize it. You want a strong, good candidate to fertilize the egg. And an egg will actually choose a sperm. If several sperm meet the egg or get to the egg, reach the egg, an egg will actually choose and allow one sperm to fertilize it, or potentially 2 sperm, and then we have twins, right? So when I go to the next slide, this is the female anatomy. This is the side view of it. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to go into the front view because it's a little easier to see it. So next question. Boom. Number 4, what happens on day one of a woman's menstrual cycle? Now, a woman's menstrual cycle consists of typically 28 days or a month, right? Well, on day 1, it's the first day of their period or menstruation. That's day 1. That's the answer to that question. Now, when you have a 28-day cycle, if you're fairly regular, you count days, you can actually sort of see, and there's some signs and symptoms of what's actually taking place in your anatomy. Now, important note, there's a question that comes up a lot. I'm going to answer it for you right now. Mr. Eckert, can a woman get pregnant before she has her period? And most people say, no, that's impossible. Well, that's not true, because things happen before a woman menstruates or has her period, and that is an egg is released from the ovary, goes into a fallopian tube. You may have never had a period, but you still have released an egg. And if you've been sexually active, then sperm can go and fertilize that egg before a woman has ever had her first period. Yes, that can happen. Yes, it has happened. You don't know if you're fertile or not, even if you haven't had your first period yet. So that's a big question that always pops up. And it's kind of like, whoa, I didn't realize that. But it's true. So when we look at the female anatomy, your next question is going to be similar to the first question. Just like you did with the sperm, identify the correct path the egg or ovum travels using the vocab below. So you have an ovary, uterus, fallopian tube, and then there's these things that happen. The egg dissolves, or it implants into the uterine lining, and menstruation occurs. So where does the egg originate? So the egg originates in an ovary. When a girl is inside her mother's uterus developing, she has all of the eggs that she will ever have in her body at that time, which is kind of wild to think about, that the egg that made you was inside your mom when she was growing inside her mom. So at one point, kind of, you were inside your grandma. It's kind of crazy to think about, but it's a very amazing thing about a female, which is why you're born with a set number of eggs. Once those eggs run out, you stop menstruating. You stop having your period. That's called menopause, right? So, tangent. I love my tangents. So we have an egg that develops in one of these ovaries. Now, fallopian tube right here. They're not connected to the ovary. They actually sort of hover over the ovary, like the claw game that you see at like restaurants where you go to pick something up, right? Well, just like a fallopian tube hovers over the ovary will all of a sudden start to bulge because it's getting ready for an egg to eject. The eggs mature, then they eject out, right? The fallopian tube sort of goes over the ovary, finds out where the egg's coming out, and it sees it, and it covers it, and it sucks up the egg, right? Both ovaries do not produce eggs at the same time. Typically, they alternate, left, right, left, whatever. There are times, though, when multiple eggs are released, and that's how we get fraternal twins. Now, excuse me, when you have an egg that comes out of the ovary, it goes into the fallopian tube. That's part two. Once the egg is in the fallopian tube, let me get my annotation going here again. I'm going to draw. I want a skinny line. Let's make it green. So I have my egg right here, right? It's going to travel into the fallopian tube. Now, two things can happen inside of a fallopian tube. One, there's sperm waiting there for the egg, and it fertilizes the egg. If that happens, there's a good chance that she's going to become pregnant. Not always the case, though. However, if it doesn't get fertilized, this egg is basically going to dissolve on its way out into the uterus. All while this is happening, and I'm going to change my color of my pen to red for a reason, is the uterine lining right here is building up, okay? And that uterine lining that builds up is building up with nutrients ready for a fertilized egg to implant into it. But if the egg is not fertilized, it doesn't implant, it dissolves, and there's no use for that uterine lining. So it's shed. And that shedding is menstruation. It's when a woman has her period. If the egg is fertilized, then what will happen is it will start developing into an embryo. And it will come down into the uterus, and it will implant into the uterus. And once it implants in the uterus, it uses all of that lining that's built up to grow, develop. And then a woman doesn't have her period because she needs all that stuff to fertilize the baby and grow the baby. And if you're ever late or not having your period, you should take a test because you could be pregnant. Too early for that though, right? No unintended pregnancies in our class. So that is the female anatomy. So when we go to our questions, let me clear this. And then when I go into my questions, you have to talk about where the egg originates, where does it travel into. If the egg is not fertilized, two things happen. If the egg is fertilized, what will most likely occur? Now, question 6, typically, which days in their cycle is a woman most fertile? So remember I told you about how there's days, and day 1 is their period. Well, I'm going to get to this screen. I'm going to full screen that. This talks about the days in a woman's cycle and what happens. So day 1, menstruation occurs. That uterine lining is shed. However, throughout those days after your period, the uterine lining is building up. All right. And ovulation at one point during this occurs. And that is when a woman is most fertile. So if I go to this screen right here, you can see that at day 9 through 16, a woman is most fertile. That's the answer, day 9 through 16. Typically on the earlier end. However, if you're not regular, meaning some girls do not get their periods all at the same time and they're sporadic. Some girls miss a period and it's normal. Everyone's different, right? So it's important that if you are regular, you can sort of track things, right? And if you do at some point in your life get in a committed relationship, you can actually find out when you're more fertile. So you probably avoid having sex on those days. Now, what occurs when a woman's fertile? Well, their body temperature actually rises. So if you are really interested about finding out when you're most fertile, you take your temperature every day. You can also chart that by your vaginal secretions. They change in texture during that time. They become more lubricated, if you will, so that way sperm can travel easier in them. And your hormone levels change. Estrogen spikes, where progesterone then increases after that, that spike in estrogen. And there's actually a test you can take to see if you're fertile because it detects that spike in estrogen, right? So let's watch a short video together and then I'm gonna wrap things up. I gotta watch this on YouTube, I forget. I'm gonna close that one out. I'm gonna go to this one. All right, let's pay attention to the video. It's only 2 minutes and 39 seconds. Here we go.
Ovulation is a part of the menstrual cycle when the ovary releases a ripe egg, or ovum. Inside the ovary are hundreds of thousands of follicles. Each follicle is a hollow ball of cells with an immature egg in the center. The typical 28-day menstrual cycle begins on the first day of menstrual bleeding. During the first 7 days of the cycle, a few follicles begin to grow at the same time. These maturing follicles secrete estrogen hormone into the bloodstream to prepare the lining of the uterus for pregnancy. Around day 7, all of the follicles stop growing and begin to degenerate, except for one. This dominant follicle continues to grow and nourishes the developing egg inside it. Around day 12, the follicle secretes a large amount of estrogen into the bloodstream. When the estrogen reaches the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland in the brain, the anterior or front part of the pituitary gland releases a huge surge of luteinizing hormone into the bloodstream.
So all very technical and it's sort of taking you through, but giving you a picture of everything that I explained. If you're unfamiliar what a pituitary gland is, that's up in your brain. Well, there's this command center in your brain, the pituitary gland, that tells your body, specifically your hormones, what to do, when to do it, right? So your pituitary gland tells your body to release these hormones and says, let's do these things that we're telling you to do.
Around day 14, luteinizing hormone causes the follicle to undergo a sudden growth spurt. Right before ovulation, the egg detaches from the inside of the follicle.
So you see that? Remember I talking about the fallopian tube being disconnected? And it has to sort of recognize where an egg is starting to protrude from the ovary and where it's going to burst out into. And this is not the egg, but this tiny little white thing right there. That's the egg, or the ovum, if you will.
The bulging follicle releases chemicals, causing one of the two fallopian tubes to move in closer and surround the follicle. The follicle swells until it bursts open, ejecting the egg and fluid from the follicle into the abdominal cavity. In response, the fimbriae, tiny projections at the end of the fallopian tube, sweep across the ovulation site and pick up the egg. Microscopic cilia on the fimbriae's surface transport the egg to the entrance of the fallopian tube. Inside the walls of the fallopian tube, muscular contractions gently push the egg towards the uterus. After ovulation, the egg lives for 12 to 24 hours, so it must be fertilized by a sperm from the male during this time for a woman to become pregnant. If it's not fertilized, the egg dissolves away and is shed along with the uterine lining during menstruation.
Boom, so there you have it. It's a picture diagram of actually what happens during ovulation. This is charting a mucus pattern. I'm gonna let you guys see all these slides. So I'm gonna share these slides with you along with the questions, along with the video in Classroom. Take a look at the video, answer the questions, turn them into me, and consider day 1 of virtual health in the books. Let's say your virtual due date is the end of the week, and then Monday, hopefully Monday, we'll have lesson 2. If not, that'll happen Tuesday. But I'm going to try and get 2 lessons out to you next week. This week, only 1 lesson so far, but now I'm sort of getting a hang of this whole Zoom thing. So I'll be able to start making these more efficiently. So if you got any questions, email me. Monday, I'm hopefully going to have some office hours where you can just talk to me if you want to join my group, and I'll have directions and a guide to do that in Classroom. So stay tuned. Check back Monday. It'll probably happen around this time, around noon to 1, that you'll be able to talk to me live and in person. So I will talk to you guys soon. Stay healthy, stay active, and hope you enjoyed it. Later.